Hello and welcome everyone. I'm Pattie Lovett-Reid. I am the chief financial commentator, shall I call myself? I think I created that title at HomeEquity Bank. I'm absolutely delighted to be here. Before I introduce our guests, and I'm going to, what we know for a fact is that the Canadian landscape is shifting. Canadians are living longer, they're living more active lives than we've ever seen before. And based on the research that we're going to talk about today, more and more Canadians want to age in place in their homes and in their communities. But I think what we will hear, it's not going to be without its challenges, such as access to in-home health care. Now, we are bringing to you two experts in this field. CARP and HomeEquity Bank have teamed up for this seminar, and I'm absolutely delighted to introduce CARP's Chief Advocacy and Education Officer, Bill VanGorder.
Gorder.
Gordner, yes, and HomeEquity Bank's Chief Marketing Officer, Vivianne Gauci. We're going to talk about these obstacles and some of these solutions. What we're going to do is we're going to delve into, as I already highlighted, the preference to age in place, the barriers to home support, the value of the unpaid caregiver, and just how much they provide, funding in-home health care, and I think there'll be a call to action on how you can become an advocate. So, Vivianne, for the last 3 years, a lot of research has been done in this field. Can you share some of the highlights?
Sure, Patty, thank you. And I guess we started recognizing that the retirement landscape was shifting a while ago. And so as the only federally regulated Schedule I bank in Canada, to serve exclusively Canadians aged 55 plus, we decided it was important to better understand what some of these changes and shifts meant. And so starting into 2022, we started doing research, and we started seeing this growing home health care needs of Canadians, because as we know, and this stat has been repeated over and over again by many, many organizations, including ourselves, we actually see that most Canadians, 9 in 10 Canadians, prefer to age in place. And so a key part of that equation is how are you going to address all of the support needs that you might need as you're aging. And so that includes your physical and your emotional needs, as well as the financial ones, obviously. And really, what we saw in the research, especially recently, was that 3 in 5 Canadians said that their quality of life would be at risk without adequate support from someone like a PSW who could provide that home health care support, so that people can actually stay at home and have the support, because we know that staying at home is so important to help secure people's dignity in aging. So I have an example, and I know you have stories like this too, Patty. For me, my mother-in-law was not doing well earlier this year, and for her it was important to be able to stay at home while she was going through frankly final stages of life. And it was so important to her. And for us, it was important for us to be able to meet her wishes and be able to address that. And so I think it's a healthcare, it's a physical healthcare imperative, but there's a lot of emotional elements that come with it. And this whole sense of being able to address these needs to make sure that you're protecting people's independence and sense of dignity is so important, such an important part of the equation here.
I'd like to bring you now and Bill to the conversation, because it's aging in place. Not everybody wants to. You represent a large cohort of people. What do you hear here?
Well, we here, and we do represent a large cohort. We have 225,000 members
Yeah.
across the country in the Canadian Association of Retired Persons, and we survey them regularly. So some of the things I'm going to be talking about today come directly from them based on our surveys and our discussions and the communications we get from them. And there are three basic reasons probably that people want to stay in their own homes. First of all, that's where they're comfortable and that's where they feel most safe. And as we all know, as we get older, moving location of where you're staying becomes harder and harder on our mental health. So there's an absolute reason that people want to stay where they're comfortable now. Another reason, of course, is they have beds at home, and going into facilities, there aren't always beds available where they want, where they're going to be comfortable. And the
Mhm.
other reason is they don't want to be a burden on their family, but they want to be able to stay at home so that the family doesn't have to worry about them. And the other problem is they don't really understand the options that are available to them. So they want to stay where they're comfortable as long as they can, at least in their own community, not necessarily in the house that they've lived in for the last 50 years, but at least in an apartment close by or somewhere where they're still among their families and friends and their known community.
But what about when you say the options that they have available to them? Why do our seniors not know what they are and what are they?
Well, you know, our CARP Nova Scotia branch has done a lot of research in this area, and they've determined that in many ways, home care is invisible. You don't know about it till you need it. Often
Mhm.
families don't find out anything about home care until the nurse tells them on Friday afternoon that mom has to be out of the hospital on Monday and can't go back to where she is without home care, and then they start looking that home care is not something that people are preparing themselves well enough ahead of time. And that's why it's so wonderful to see the hundreds of people that are on this webinar this afternoon and who will watch the recording later who want to understand what's available, because often people just don't know what they don't know about home care. Many people assume that
Mhm.
the government plans will take care of them no matter what happens. They don't realize that home care isn't even covered under the federal Health Care Act. So there's no specific supports and very different support. So somebody in Ontario who has a parent that might need home care in Ontario, in Nova Scotia, has no idea what the
Mhm.
facilities are and what the opportunities or lack of opportunities are.
Bill, and I'm going to come back to you, Vivian, in just one second on that,
Yeah.
because I'd like your personal anecdote around your mom, if that's what in fact happened to you. But Bill, before I let you go on this, there's a saying out there, at least in the personal financial arena, the best time to plan for something like this is 5 years before you need it. I had that conversation with you, and go ahead, tell everybody what your
Well, I
response
said,
was.
the best time to plan was 5 years ago, but the second best time is today.
Yeah,
So if
yeah, because nobody
are
does it.
if you or a loved one are as concerned enough to watch this webinar today, then today is the day to start planning and to realize that there are supports available, but you've got to go looking for them. There is some publicly funded care, depending on where you live, and it's a checkerboard across the country. It's your postal code does really determine the level of care that's going to be
Oh.
available to you. There's family funded home care, and this is where you and the family contribute to buying those extra supports, because any even even where there's an amount of government supported home care available, it's not enough. People always need to have extra care that they have to pay for themselves. And then there's community donated home care where charities and groups locally will help. You have to make yourself aware of all those possibilities in your specific community available today.
You know what I find? I'm just going to throw out an anecdote. This is editorial on my part. I find that very frustrating. You're in a moment of need. You want to be able to turn to a resource to get the help that you need. And there are all these options, and there isn't, we're coming back to this. Vivian, I'm going to bring you into it. Stop my rant right now. But can I ask you on a personal note, and I didn't ask you beforehand if I can, so feel free to say no, but with your mother-in-law, she had a desire to stay at home. She obviously needed a lot of care. I'm going to assume that was beyond what maybe immediate family could provide 24/7. Is that fair?
Yeah, that was the challenge, right? Because she wanted to stay at home and we were trying to make it happen, but at the end of the day, she needed extra support that we just couldn't provide. And so that's where you need help from a professional. You need help from someone else.
So
You know,
where
some
did you turn?
families. So we actually went and got a PSW, which was critical. Like
Okay.
without that, she just wouldn't get the care that she needed. So that's what we did personally, and it was a game changer for us. So and Bill was alluding to this before, but it's a checkerboard approach, and the postal code does drive the level of access. So and assuming you're lucky enough to get access to some of this care, it's usually not enough. Whatever
Yeah.
the government will provide, it's not enough. And so usually families do have to supplement care.
Well, I did notice, Bill, if I can bring you back in, CARP research found that the need for in-home healthcare is only going to continue to grow. That makes sense. You've got an aging population. The number of older Canadians requiring the support of unpaid caregivers is projected to more than double by 2050.
Yeah, and frankly, I think
That's the need. That's not the response.
yeah, and frankly, I think they're underestimating in that area from what we're hearing because people are, people are living longer. They're living healthier to a point, and then we have medications or ways of keeping people alive in dignity and enjoyment in their later years, but they need supports. And so I would suspect that when you talk about something happening in 2050, for people of an age like me in my 80s, that goes in one ear and out the other. Tell me something's happening in 2050. I want to know what's happening in 2029. I want to know what's happening right now. And there's going to be a huge increase in the need for home care and of all kinds in the next few years because we can't even build enough new long-term care spaces for the people who might to decide they would go into them because they can't get the home care they need. And how much more expensive is that? It costs thousands and thousands of dollars a week to have a person in long-term care, and we're talking hundreds of dollars to allow a person to stay in their own home. False economy on behalf of governments and others.
I'm going to move on, but I will say, because I'm reading the chats as they're coming through, I'm also listening to you, just so you know. But they're calling it a tsunami. There's going to be a tsunami that is going to hit our country as we continue to age. And while yes, active, until what you're alluding to, we're not.
Yeah, exactly.
A huge number. Okay, let's
And
talk about
and Bill, sorry, just one thing
Yeah.
to build on Bill's point. A lot of people don't want to go to long-term care. That's the other thing.
Yeah,
No,
absolutely.
Even if there was availability. A lot of people just don't want to do that.
Not everybody is totally social and wants to be in a large place with a lot of other people. I was talking to a good friend last night who's in exactly that position now, a 92-year-old mother who needs some kind more care than the apartment she's in now, because last week she fell and broke both hips of all things and is going to need help. She doesn't want to be in a large place. My own mother-in-law was in the same way. She was a very independent woman who spent her life in retail, and by the time she retired, she didn't want to have anything to do with other people except her family anymore. And she was really resistant to going into long-term care until she absolutely had to at the very end.
So what I will tell you is that my mother's on the other end of the spectrum. She wants absolutely nothing to do with me. No, and I kind of mean that because, it is very funny. Well, I'm not so sure it's funny now when I actually say the words out loud. Mom is in assisted care, and she has always made it very clear that she did not want any one of her 4 adult children now to care for her. She said, I want to be able to do this in assisted living. But to your point, Vivian, there's this fear of assisted living means moving then into full care. And that's a hard no. I don't know what's going to happen at that point. But that does lead me to the barriers to home support and getting the support in. I'm going to jump to a question that I have further down, but I think it's pertinent to what we're talking about right now. We're all talking about conversations that went on in our household. These are not easy conversations. Bill, like, how do you start them? Who starts them? Do you start them, or do your family members?
It's like any difficult family conversation. It's really hard to suggest to people what they should do in their particular case. But in whatever way you have conversations in your family, you've got to keep bringing up the subject. And our experience and experience from people we talk to is that you have to do this repeatedly. You can't just have the conversation once and feel that whatever seemed to come out of the end of that conversation is the way it's going to happen, because people have the right to change their minds. They do. They get more information, and supplying the basic information, even having a discussion. Show them the video, which will be available, of this webinar, and then begin a conversation around it, so that people begin considering, because people don't realize always kind of what we call the trajectory of what's going to be happening. What are your finances going to have to be? What do you need to have in terms of investments and relatives and friends who are willing to help? The whole education about what's available. As I said before, home care until you need it is invisible. So don't let it be invisible to your loved ones. Make sure you start raising the visibility as soon as you can.
Vivian, it's kind of like the drip effect, what Bill's talking about. You talk about it once, then you talk about it again, then you bring it up again and again. But there can be hidden agendas where people within their own households don't want to talk about it. There is a cost to this. My own mother will say very, very proudly, and my father's been gone, I'm going to say almost 8 years, 9 years. I have not spent a dime of your father's money. I go, wait a minute, it's your money and we don't need your money. So let's spend your money. Let's get the support that you need. But there's this fierce hanging on. And so there's the cost element that comes into play. There are time constraints. There's the emotional toll of being that caregiver for someone that elects to stay at home. And, even having a trusted family member, and I witness it and I see it at different times. It'll be my brother and something will come out, or she doesn't like the answer she gets there. Then she'll come to me, or then she'll go to my sister, until she gets the answer that she wants. And that's, might as well start. But there are these barriers that somehow we have to overcome.
Well, so the having the conversation is absolutely key, and oftentimes at least having the first conversation to get the ball rolling is important. And so I think Bill was talking about having multiple conversations. I completely agree with that. Just start and have the first one, I think, is the most important. I know it's an emotionally fraught topic. It's very sensitive, and but the key thing, and I think Bill was touching on this, is it's important to make sure that we're taking into consideration what the individual wants at the end of the day, and it's their wishes. And to Bill's point, they can change their mind. What we saw in our research is the good news is that half of the we call them the sandwich generation has actually started having these conversations. So just over half, which is good. It's a good start, but obviously we need to encourage more of those conversations to take place. And I get it. It's tough. It's tough to have the conversation, and it's tough because there's a lot of barriers to Pattie, you were touching on this, but there's a lot of barriers to actually getting the support that people need. So you touched upon the financial barriers, and we know that almost all actually Canadians feel like they would have to make financial sacrifices to afford home health care, right? So
Yeah.
that's the first piece, because it's a real part of the equation, because we talked about the fact that governments will only provide a bare minimum, and usually only in acute cases where maybe somebody's had a fall or there's an actual immediate medical need. There's also the issue of all the time constraints. So whether it's a sandwich generation issue where it's an adult kid or even a spouse, you're juggling so many other priorities. Being able to fit that support in, can be draining and emotionally draining as well.
Emotionally and physically.
And just not possible in some cases, right? You have to be in too many places at once. You have your own, potentially in the sandwich generation, you have to be able to be there to pick up your kids after school. So how are you going to be there for mom and dad? That's always going to be a challenge, right? So then that all creates emotional strain.
Yeah, it does.
Right?
So I want to just add, if I can, I'll come back on that, Bill. When we talk, are today's retirees different from yesterday's retirees? I'm talking about even the proximity of where people live, because to Viv's point, you may be very lucky and have a relative in your own backyard, so to speak. But I'm wondering, is that
Well,
even
it's
realistic?
not as true anymore. We know that people are much more mobile in their work, so families split up. Here, where I live, most of the time on the East Coast, a lot of people spend a lot of time in Western Canada working there, and so the families are split up by provinces away in terms of and even the understanding of what's available. I talked earlier about the postal code determining your level of health care, and what I'm talking about there is the fact that every province, and in every province within every community, there are different levels of care that are available. So if you're a sandwich generation family member living in Alberta and your parents are on PEI, you don't automatically know what's available there or have any contacts to be able to do it. And that brings another barrier up. As Vivianne was talking about, the other one is trusting the caregivers. In our surveys, this is one of the other things that we found, is that older people, especially when they're more frail, are often distrusting of strangers in their home, and when the family is not able to give all the caregiving and wants to bring in professional caregivers, there's an emotional barrier there in terms of even having them accepted, or making sure that you're getting regular caregivers in so that your loved one gets to know the people who are coming into their houses. And this is something that if you're a sandwich generation person away trying to manage the health care of your loved one, that's difficult.
No, it's got to be so difficult when you think about it with modern life, but it's also, we're making an assumption that the potential caregiver wants to do this, not whether or not they are able to do it and they can afford to do it. Vivianne, how realistic are there stats that would suggest that some are saying, I can't do this. I just can't for a whole host of reasons.
Well, I think the emotional strain of this goes both ways, right? So we know that for over half of Canadians feel that, you know, this whole topic places an emotional strain. 61% of Canadians feel this is
Yeah.
this whole need to get extra home health care support is places an emotional strain. I can tell you a personal anecdote. My mother-in-law didn't want anybody coming to the house at all
Okay.
at the beginning. And so what we had to do is a hybrid approach, and we got somebody who was at least known to the family who could come and help out. And then we needed the full PSW care support. And at that point, you know, unfortunately, you know, the needs, the medical needs were such that she actually needed somebody who could do some of the medical requirements. So we had to employ a hybrid support. But again, the whole fierce independence and nature that she had, she actually didn't want anybody coming in. So never mind going to long-term care, she didn't even want somebody to come
Come in
in.
the house.
So that
Yeah.
created
Yeah.
a whole other layer. So it's tough trying to balance and
Yeah.
juggle all that, and for her, just for her as well, not just for the rest of the family. It was a difficult situation. We figured it out,
Mhm.
but there's a whole host of emotions that are involved
You
throughout
know,
this whole process.
it was interesting because a couple of weeks back, Mom called me at 10 to 6 in the morning, which is never, it's that gut wrenching, oh my goodness, I know that number. Why are they calling? And she said, I have a big problem and I need you to solve it. And I'm thinking, okay, well, you're talking to me. So that's going to be an easy problem to solve, Mom. And it was because they were relocating her personal support worker, her caregiver, that would shower Mom regularly, because it's about dignity. She's had the same person for, a long time, well over 5 years, maybe 7. And she said, I don't want someone else coming in. She knows how to hold me. She knows what to do. We have an unspoken word. And so I think the dignity is also drives a lot of this agenda. Bill, I'm going to throw out a really tough question for you because I really want an answer. Why don't we have a national policy on this?
We don't have a national policy because the policy makers at the national level have not seen fit to make this a priority yet. Part of their hesitation, frankly, is that so much of the delivery is the responsibility of the provinces, and they hesitate to get into more bun fights with the provinces, especially these days when there's a lot of disagreement. So they have not had the political will to do it. And that's why you were talking about a call to action earlier. One of the things that we are urging our members and anyone that's watching this webinar who are concerned about this issue, talk to your local elected federal members, no matter which party they're in, and let them know you want change in terms of the way the federal government, first of all, approaches home care, and then talk to your provincial elected members. We can do webinars like this all we want. I can pontificate from the CARP headquarters about how important this is, but politicians really only act when they know the people who vote for them want
Yes,
something.
that's what I was going to say.
Now that's what we've got to have. And don't send them an email. They just count them. They don't read them. If you could send them a letter, handwritten in pencil, they sometimes look at those. But in the summer, they're going to be in their ridings, in their offices. At least phone them. And if you can, go knock on their door and tell them these things in person.
We can vote. Okay, I'm going to come back to your questions, but I can see our people on the line have some questions. So let's get right into some of the meat of it here. Anthony, are you there? Do you have questions that you could throw our way?
Yeah, thanks very much, Patty.
Bringing you in, I could have given you some heads up, but there you go.
No problem. I'm standing by. One of the biggest questions brewing here are from seniors who don't have children or there's no adult children in their family.
Yeah.
What's the best advice for them?
Well, I'll start if you like, and that's where where we're talking about family funded caregiving. This would be personally funded caregiving, and one of the things we haven't talked a lot about, but it is important, and not just because of the partnership we have in giving this webinar, and that is you've got to do your financial planning now, knowing that if you want to have home care, you are going to have to pay for somebody have to put that in your plans. And we urge financial advisors and other people who work with older Canadians to make sure they understand this has to be a part of your plan. You may want to take some trips as you get older. You may want to do some other things, but you've got to plan for the future of your own health needs too.
You could live too darn long. I mean, it's a fact.
Well, we are living longer, and we're outliving our money. One of the problems is, especially for people who are reaching the what used to be called the retirement age, but who knows anymore what that age is. But people didn't plan to live so long, and we're living longer and healthier, and there's not money to do it. And once again, the time to start saving for that time is right now. If you haven't started before, start now. Plan.
Okay, so Viv, this is
Yeah.
a natural segue for me to bring you in
Absolutely.
because I personally believe that the chip reverse mortgage I'm putting words in your mouth, but this is exactly what it could be used for, your own health care.
Absolutely. We have a lot of customers who come to us with this specific need in mind. We absolutely see it. Either somebody wants it for themselves or somebody wants to support a spouse's healthcare need. So we see this happening all the time. You know, sometimes the kids can't come in and help and support extra help or extra care, even, you know, in the form of a PSW, if they can't physically be there themselves. And we're talking
Right.
about people who don't have kids who can help. So we see this because, you know, unfortunately, if they didn't start planning 20 years ago to save enough, you know, this is a very real thing. You know, they didn't save enough, but they made this excellent decision 20, 30, 40 years ago to invest in a house, and they bought a house and they have this great asset sitting there. But you know, the reality is they can't afford to get the healthcare that they need. So
But to
that's
your
one
point,
option.
if they want to stay in their home, this is exactly the access to emergency funds by way of taking equity out that
Exactly.
allows them to have options that Bill's talking about, self-funding. And some parents, even if they have family that can afford to fund, may decide to take some of the equity out of their home and use it that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
And listen,
somebody just came up here and said they were forced to sell their home, I think, to pay for it. And maybe not. Maybe they didn't need to after
maybe they didn't need to. And I mean, listen, this is one option of many. You know, what I always say is people should go out, ask questions, do their own research. Because there's home equity line of credits that that people can get. And those typically feature lower interest rates. And then on the flip side is they require minimum monthly payments. And obviously you know, not everyone qualifies. You can get a conventional mortgage, same considerations with that, lower interest rates, but you have some limitations with those. And then some people say, you know what, I'm just going to downsize. But then you get into the whole issue of, well, if you do have some family support, you don't want to move away from that, or if you value staying in your community, there's a whole host of not just economical, but also and financial, but also emotional challenges with that decision. So there are options. You know, what we always say is we just want to make sure people are exploring all of their options to make the decision that's right for them, right?
Yeah, and I have to tell you, I was challenged here when I said, what if you live too darn long? I plan on living too darn long. Darn long, I don't know by whose standards or what, but I remember starting out in this industry thinking, all right, let's plan on living, and it was sort of conventional wisdom, into your 80s, maybe your 90s. Well, look at the people living into their hundreds and well beyond, healthy, productive lives that may need some help, but are still self-sufficient. So your thoughts on that? So when I say too darn long, I mean just too darn long by what some people may think, not by my standard. I hope to be here.
I think there's another point that we need to make on this issue too, because there certainly are people who don't own their own homes, who are living in apartments
Yeah.
and don't have savings or capital to use some of these opportunities, and they need to check the other opportunities. There are not enough of them, but there are communities where there are organizations who will support people who are in this kind of position with homes co-op, homes co-housing, opportunities to live with other people, charities who will do that. Some provinces, not enough, have some standards where if the money just isn't there, they will subsidize homes to allow people to stay in their own homes. Once again, it's a checkerboard from community to community, but you need to contact people in your community who have knowledge and can help you navigate through the possibilities where you live. Some provinces have even begun to hire and have navigators available for people to talk to who know all the different options, because you don't know what options are available in your home or in your hometown. So that's the other thing to remember, that just because you don't own a house doesn't mean you can't also be planning for your future, being able to stay in your own home as long as you want to.
I love that, Bill. Anthony, are there more questions that have come through? It appears there are a few.
There are one question for Vivianne first. Question: someone had looked into a chip reverse mortgage, but the amount mentioned was much less than the value of the house. Can you just outline for the viewers
Yeah.
how that might work?
Absolutely. Thanks, Anthony. I'm glad I get a chance to address this question. So a chip reverse mortgage, for anyone who isn't aware, it's a loan and it's secured against the value of a home. And the amount that you qualify for is based on your age and the value of your home primarily. And so what we find actually is that most people are taking only about $200,000 on average, and they only take about 30% of the value of their home. So what we see here is, Canadians being very conservative about their use of funds. We even have a product that is actually very well geared for home healthcare support, whereby you're only taking the money on a monthly or quarterly basis. So you're only taking it over time as you need it, right? So you're also not paying interest on money that you don't necessarily need. So there's a lot of flexible options with this product. And what I would say is, the money that we see people taking, it's really, they're only taking what they need, because at the end of the day, it's a loan. So there's a lot of misconceptions about the fact that we are paying people for their home, and that's not true. It's really just a loan secured against the value of the home.
Okay.
And the other question, thanks, Patty. The other question was for Bill, and it was about the autonomy of the older adult. So we talk about sandwich generation and the role of family, but what's CARP's view on the role of the older adult in making their own decisions ultimately?
Well, absolutely. Just because you're older doesn't mean you're not able to make your own decisions. And frankly, people have the right to make stupid decisions, and sometimes they do. But when push comes to pull, we have to be careful as younger members of the community that we're not over-parenting our parents in the way we see that sometimes happening in the reverse these days. So certainly, the feeling of self-worth and the independence that's required to live a healthy life in dignity demands that the final decision needs to be made by the older adult themselves. However, the responsibility we all have as families and friends is make sure they're aware of all of the options that are available. I don't know how many times I've seen people decide they're going to do one thing firmly and determine they're going to do it. And when they're allowed to understand what the other options are, they discover other options that they'd rather have. People also have the right to change their mind.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Anthony, are there any more?
Just questions from non-homeowners who are on the line with us. What are some of the other options they may have to ensure that they can help to protect themselves when they need care?
Well, I'll start that. One is to make sure you're aware of what supports are available in your province and your community. So many provinces have, for instance, just an example of Nova Scotia that I know well, there's an annual $750 grant that's available to people over 65 to repair or fix things in their home if their income is below a certain level. And often that's all that takes to have somebody be more comfortable. It means they can, do some work around the home to make it more accessible, more comfortable. Recently, we had a lady who was we found she was looking at long-term care because her fridge had died on her. She couldn't prepare her own meals at home, and therefore she was thinking maybe she'd have to move into long-term care. Of course, we were able to find the money to actually a service club donated a new fridge to her, and now she's happily staying in her own home, creating most of her own meals, although she has Meals on Wheels coming in a couple of days a week with meals from that service. So making sure you know what services are already available. There are nonprofit long-term care homes. Many of them also operate home care associations and have subsidies available from government for that to happen. And also to talk with your local for-profit home care agencies. They are very aware of what the abilities are in your neighborhood to find support for what you're doing. And the family-funded home care may be your personally funded home care, and you'll find that it's more available and accessible than you thought it would be. Find out if your province has navigators who are aware of all these supports, or there are also private individuals who offer that kind of advice across the country. And so don't assume that you know everything that's available for you now, even if you're not in a high income or homeowner category.
And Bill, can people also go to their doctors as well to start that conversation?
They can go. Many doctors are aware of what's available in their communities, especially the younger doctors. Most of the training programs, university medicine training programs, now one part of the training is helping young doctors understand what other services are available in community. Also, community clinics where there are nurses and other health professionals. They're often very aware of the services that are available. Many communities also have organizations which are collaborations of charities and businesses that support seniors, and they have that kind of information also. And I can say if you're not aware in your community of some of these supports, ask CARP. We're often able to put you in the right direction because our local CARP chapters know of these opportunities and are willing to help people find them.
We're going to wrap things up. Unless, Anthony, are there any other final burning?
No, nothing burning.
Nothing burning. Vivianne, what is the thought that you want to leave people with here today?
I feel like I sound like a broken record, but I think it's important to convey, and that is for everyone to do their research. Bill provided an incredible number of resources and avenues for you to check out. And I think that's important as you're exploring your home healthcare needs. And then the same goes for your financial needs, right? So make sure that you're going out, you're doing your research, you're asking questions, you're comparing all the options, make sure that you're comparing all the options. And make sure that you're going out and asking the right questions to make sure that you're making the decision that's right for you. We do have an offer for anyone who's on the call today, and it's a free book called Home Run. And that book is basically contains a lot of information about recent trends for retirees. But it also, my favorite part of the book is all the stories of people who have considered all of their options and how their lives have changed once they've made certain decisions. And so it really is a great, useful tool. People have told us time and time again that they read the book, and then after reading the book, they, and doing more of their own research, then they decided to come and talk to us. So the toll-free number is there, 1-855-460-7262. You can call right now. Our team is standing by, and we'll mail the book to you free of charge. And again, it's just one other tool for you to continue your research journey to make the decision that's right for you.
Vivianne, that's great, and thank you. And I can say that I endorsed the book. I read the book, and any questions that I had unanswered about a chip reverse mortgage were answered. And so I found it very helpful. And I will say in layperson terms, CARP, great resource, great resource.
Yeah, two things I would want to leave folks with. The first is there is a lot of information about home care and what's available, policies, advocacy on our CARP website. So simply go to carp.ca and use the drop-down menu to find home care. You'll find a lot of information there. And secondly, just to repeat my plea, we know that governments aren't supporting home care and community care as much as we want them to. Tell your local elected representatives you want that changed, and if you add your voice to ours, we will be able to make a difference.
So for the first time in my life, I can become an advocate.
You can.
I can. I'm going to. And I honestly believe that there will be so many people who are here today that will also use their voices to try to make a difference, because change is happening fast and furiously, and we need answers. So I'd like to thank you, Vivianne. I'd like to thank you, Bill. I found it very insightful. I hope those on the line did as well. This is recorded. If in the event that you would like to share it with someone, please do. And if you have a question, email us directly because we will get back to you. So thanks, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you the next time.
Good. Thanks, Patty.
Thank you, Patty.